Howdy. This is Mission Texas.
A political podcast about winning Texas by 2032, or else we may lose the White House for a generation.
I'm one of your hosts, Alex Clark.
And I am Kate Rumsey.
Other podcasts may focus on the day-to-day or the next election, but we are keeping the eyes of Texas on the bigger prize. What happens after the next census?
All right, this is our first inaugural episode. Alex, can you believe that we got here? As we mentioned in our introduction, this is Mission Texas, our introductory episode. And with all of y'all, I hope to talk about what we are as a podcast, what Mission Texas means to us as two hosts, what you can expect from us from a podcast going forward. Maybe this changes, maybe it doesn't. And then maybe looking forward, what are our goals for this podcast and our maybe predictions about what's going on? So Alex, is that an okay roadmap?
All of that's right, but I think we got to back up even further for those of these people who are joining us. Who are we? I mean, I think some of these people are going to know who I am. They're following because they saw it as coming from me, but might not know you, and vice versa. People who know you, but they don't know me. So, what is it about us? Who are we? What do we have in common? Why do we find each other? And why do we want to do this podcast? I think they're all wrapped up in each other, but let's talk about who we are. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Exactly. Who is this podcast and who are these hosts? So my name's Kate. I grew up in Texas. I'm an 8th-generation Texan. Grew up in Carrollton in the North Texas area. And you know what? Unlike Alex, I grew up thinking I was a Republican. I thought everyone's a Republican. My whole community's a Republican. But as I grew older, I realized I did not subscribe to the policies with the Republican Party. And I believed that my hopes and dreams for our country, for my family, are with the Democratic Party. But in the meantime, I went to Notre Dame, and I'm Catholic. So I'm a practicing Catholic, and I'm also a lawyer. I was in the Department of Justice as a federal prosecutor for 7 years in the North Texas and then Virginia region. And I'm also a reservist in the United States Air Force. And Alex, as of today, actually, and I don't speak on behalf of the Air Force, I'm not on orders, but as of today, I promoted to major, which is kind of crazy. Yesterday was 9/11, you know when we're recording this, and 9/11 is a huge reason why I became an officer in the Air Force, and I'm a JAG, so I'm an attorney for the JAG Corps. But what got me into politics is a long story, but the short version is that I ran for office as a state house member in 2024. I lost in the primary, but I learned a lot, and I hope to talk about that as somebody who came as an outsider in politics, somebody who was non-political in the government, and how I got into politics. But it made me invested and it opened up opportunities for me, and also friendships I made from that opportunity. And one of those people that I made friends with in this process is my co-host, Alex. So now I'm going to let you, plus I'm a mom. I'm a mom living in the suburbs of North Texas, and invested in my kids' future here in Texas, and also my family's, as I mentioned, going back 8 generations. So anyways, Alex, you.
Yeah. So high points right off the bat, things we have in common. I was also in the Air Force. I was enlisted. I was a staff sergeant when I got out. I did intelligence, operations intelligence. I would basically build classified PowerPoints and give them to different audiences. You've heard of Power Rangers growing up? You maybe.
Yeah.
They called us PowerPoint Rangers. So yeah. So we have that in common. We are both people of faith. Unlike you, I'm not a Catholic, but I am. I married into the Methodist Church, and am one of the leaders of the Modern Worship Service core team of volunteers at First United Methodist Church in Dallas. Some other things we have in common. I'm also the parent of some young kids. I've got a 3-year-old and an almost 1-year-old. He'll turn 1 on October 1st. Time flies.
It does.
So those, I think, are the main things that I think make us kind of unique as as podcast hosts talking about democratic politics in Texas is that we're veterans. We're both lawyers. I didn't mention that. And we clerked for federal judges. In
Yeah,
fact,
very lucky.
um, yeah. So veterans, people of faith, young parents, and attorneys. I think that's kind of a unique grouping of qualities and traits. But to give you kind of a short bio of where I'm from and what I've been doing up until now, I'm from Sherman, Texas. It's about an hour north of Dallas. I stuck around after high school to go to Austin College. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is a kangaroo. We are the kangaroos.
Oh, wow, okay. See,
Yeah.
I'm the Fighting Irish. I got
I,
one face.
it's a
Got my face
classic.
there. Yep.
Yep.
Go Irish. They're
Um,
playing A&M too, so, you know, hope that, I don't offend anybody.
um, after Austin College, my wife and I we did Teach for America in San Antonio. If you look over for those of you that have visuals, there's a picture of my wife and I in front of the Alamo. We both did Teach for America. I was actually the year after. We were both the year after James Talarico started in Teach for America San Antonio.
Hmm.
And then I stuck around, enlisted in the Air Force, went to basic training, and then I went to law school in Austin, where I stuck around for 2 extra years to clerk for that federal judge I was talking about. And then after
Pointing
that,
to a picture in the back,
yeah, sorry, yeah, that's the picture of the Capitol behind us. And then we moved to Dallas, last picture here, when we wanted to start a family. And so we actually need to get that thing updated soon to have our second kid in there.
but we love us.
Kate mentioned that she grew up Republican. I didn't really grew up as nothing. My first foray into politics was as a Sherman High School intern for the Barack Obama presidential primary campaign against Hillary Clinton. And one thing kind of just led to another. I met our congressional candidate who was an Obama guy. His name is Glenn Melanson. And I figured out a way around the rules where I could actually do an internship for credit as a first semester college student. That led to me joining the Austin College Young Democrats, becoming the president of the Austin College Young Democrats. That took me on to become statewide with the Texas College Democrats. I worked on many other campaigns along the way. The Bill White for governor campaign. I was students for Bill White at the time, right? It seems like every cycle I've been involved, it seems like in one way or another. I always think that maybe I'll take one off, but I just can't seem to stay away.
Can't
And
get
so,
enough.
yeah, I kind of came into my Democratic identity during the Obama era. I was brought in because I liked him. Weirdly enough, I had gone to Texas Boys State. I think there's an Apple
Yeah,
documentary about it now.
love it.
And that was like my real eye-opening thing. And I just very, very lightly tiptoed into the waters after that and started watching like The Daily Show, right? Jon
Mhm.
Stewart, back when he was full-time, right?
Yeah.
And oddly enough, my favorite senators at the time were Barack Obama and John McCain. And I could not have guessed that they were both going to end up being the nominees of their party.
Yeah,
They had worked
right
together
on
on
there.
campaign finance, and that's why I had become fans of theirs.
Yeah.
And so it was actually my experience as an Obama fan, I think you might say, that pushed me further into like a partisan identity. I haven't found that the way he was treated by Republicans during his administration be on the up and up. It felt like whether you disagreed with him on politics on any particular issue, he was a great guy, upstanding role model for young people, good husband, good father, and just the most wild rumors and kind of
Mhm.
malicious attacks would come out against him. And he would even I remember would put forward Republican policy proposals just to have Republicans vote him down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's where I started to lean into a Democratic identity. I
Mhm.
actually assumed that eventually the Texas Republicans would make a play for my vote, and it just hasn't seemed to happen yet. But of
Yeah.
course, as we'll talk about here in a little bit, they haven't needed my vote.
I know. right?
We need more people in our coalition, and that's exactly what this podcast is about.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I don't think people would see us as the quintessential Democrat, maybe the one that they're thinking of, especially these days. We hear a lot of people saying Democrats are anti-God and America. And yeah, you and I have both proudly served our country in uniform where it says the United States on it. I've stood up in the courtroom saying Kate Rumsey on behalf of the United States very proudly. And I love my country. I love my state. And I think that's a theme of our podcast is that there's this Texas mentality of come and take it. And yet we want to bring back and take back ideas about being a Democrat and being a godly Democrat, being a patriotic Democrat, and one where we are here to stay to work on our state and make sure that, and people would say, Kate, shouldn't you be leaving Texas, leaving the country? And to that I say, this is my state that I love, and aren't you ashamed of your state about what's going on with our politics? And to that I also say, I'm not ashamed of my state. I love my state. And this is the place I want to raise my children. It's where my ancestors came here with Stephen F. Austin in the old 300. And I want it to be the place that is for everyone, including me, including my family, and for you and for my brother, and that it's not my state that is enacting these policies. It is the people in charge. And who do they represent? And it's a minority of the people who are actually in Texas, and it's those people voting. And that is what this podcast to me is about. And maybe we can get into that next, which is what is this podcast?
Yeah.
Why are we creating this thing? Why we're both working parents? Why do we start this? And maybe I can take our listeners back to last fall, where it was right after the November 2024 election. It was a huge surprise for me that Donald Trump won and that we lost so badly. And then a few weeks after the election, I was invited to go to a Planned Parenthood event in Dallas by our mutual friend Yasmin. Shout out to her. And I saw you there. And if you can imagine, you're in Texas, which is like ground zero for abortion access. And also right after the election, it's not exactly like a happy go lucky time. And you and I were chit chatting and catching up. And you said something that was so profound that it is now it is basically the basis of this entire podcast. So I'm going to let you share what you told me.
Well, yeah. So first, I would just totally echo that there's no monopoly on God-fearing or patriotic people in either party, and it is so important that we're loud about that. Right?
Yeah.
They don't get to own that. And I think it's worth noting too that at least in 2018, there was polling to suggest that if the election had been decided by native Texans, we would have had a Senator O'Rourke these last several years, as opposed to a Senator Cruz. And in fact, it was only because of the new people coming to Texas that Cruz was able to eke out a very narrow victory. I think that is an interesting and dynamic that we're going to have to figure out, because in a certain way, Texas is a magnet for kind of disaffected Republicans who want to go somewhere that might be fleeing a blue state to come to Texas so they can feel like, oh, I'm part of the winning team now.
But do we think that's statistically true? I mean, that's something we should explore, and I would love to think about
Yeah,
that.
I think we got to dig into it.
And we welcome people on this podcast who are not, or, born and raised in Texas like us,
Sure.
obviously. And so many people I know, and even in this community in North Texas, moved here.
So it all ties back into the larger thesis of the podcast, though, which is that whether we know for sure what their partisan identities are, they are coming. And that's what this is all about. What I talked to you about at that event just after the election is that, okay, everyone is focused so much on the here and now, especially in political news. If you're the kind of person who consumes it, like everyone is so wrapped up in what just happened in the last 24 hours or what happened this week that we're losing the forest for the trees a little bit, because if you zoom out, if you widen the aperture and you look at what's coming down the pike in the next census and reapportionment, the amount of electoral votes that are going to shift, they're going to be coming from California, they're going to be coming from New York and Illinois and Michigan and Minnesota and Pennsylvania. And they're going to be distributed primarily in the South, and particularly in Texas and in Florida. As many as 4 to 5 new congressional seats will be coming to Texas after the reapportionment in 2030, if all the trends hold up. And
Mm-hmm.
so not only does that mean they're going to have more representation in the House, as I alluded, I said electoral votes, right? Because that's how the Electoral College works, is every time you get a new House seat, that's another electoral vote you have. And because it's hydraulic in this way, where blue states are losing votes at the same time red states are gaining them, the kind of coalitions that used to win the White House aren't going to cut it anymore. You can be the Democratic nominee for president in 2032 and win all of the blue wall states that we all talked so much about during the last presidential cycle. You could win all 3, clean sweep, and still lose the White House.
Yeah.
So the math doesn't math anymore. So
Math's not
something
math.
has to change.
Yeah.
And if anyone has heard me talk about politics ever, they know my favorite rant is to talk about how Texas Democrats, and I count myself as a proud one, we have lost statewide, whether that's a presidential election, a governor election, Senate, any of these races that you can't blame on gerrymandering, because the state is the shape of the state. You can't redraw what a statewide race looks like. Texas Democrats have lost more consistently than any state party in the country. Every other red state has elected a Democrat more recently than we have. And every other blue state has elected a Republican statewide more recently than we have elected a Democrat. And so we have to break this curse. We have to be mission mindset, locked in on this bigger picture, or else we're going to lose the White House for not only, these next 4 years. I can't believe we're not even through the first Trump year. It feels like it's been years already. But imagine that feeling for the next decade plus.
Yeah.
If we can't figure this out.
And it should be so I think what happened next is that I think we all reflected on what we needed to do better. And one of those is that we need more messaging, more content from Democrats. And I thought there are some podcasts out there in Texas, one of whom is from our very dear friend at Progress, Texas. So shout out to them, Kathleen Thompson. And I thought, well, we could do something different, maybe a little bit different as far as content. And I contacted you and I thought, why don't we do a podcast? And you said what?
Yeah, I think that was primarily the idea, is that we have to figure out how we're going to differentiate ourselves, because I didn't want to just add to a cacophony of voices all talking about the same stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I think is really interesting about what we're trying to do here is, one, what I was just talking about, is we're going to be focused on the big picture.
Yeah.
The second thing we're going to do is we're not going to limit ourselves to the kind of traditional, kind of expected Democratic coalition, right? We are going to be expressly focused on building out and inviting new people in, right? I think sometimes, and I love them. I listen to Pod Save America like everybody else, right? But sometimes it feels a little inside baseball. Those spaces are important.
Yeah.
But I want to be really intentional about thinking, how do we grow the tent and bringing people on the show, even that, you wouldn't necessarily imagine being on a Democratic show.
Well, so when I contacted you, what was crazy is that you said, Kate, I have a mic I just bought and I've been thinking about doing a podcast too. And I'm like, wow, we are both thinking the same thing, not having talked to each other. And we both are having these ideas of we need to do something. Maybe this is part of that, and bringing that to people. Because I think both of us as people with young kids, it's hard for us to always engage in the political process and always feel like we're plugged in. We're not always available on a Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Dallas County meeting or whatever time it is.
Right.
And it's so funny because anytime sometimes I've seen you at events and you have your kid and I've got my kid and we're the only people with kids
Yeah.
and we're like running around. And so what my hope is, and this gets into kind of our goals, but it's meeting people where they are with
Yeah.
maybe it's they're running errands and they're trying to listen to about Texas politics and they're learning something from this. And maybe they're at night after they put their kids down and they're on their phone looking at this at TikTok, but I'm hoping to meet people where they are, and that's sort of why I wanted to do a podcast. But the next thing that happened for me in creating this after November and December, when we were talking about this last year, was that I went to a town hall with that was supposed to be in lieu of my congressperson, who's Beth Van Dyne, who doesn't hold in-person town
Mhm.
halls. And Colin Allred and Clay Jenkins were there, which are two North Texan politicians. And we had a huge crowd, and it was about just the state of the world, and we're all just hungry for answers. And you could hear we were asking for people were asking, what is the plan? How can we help? What are we doing? What can I do at home? And I'm not trying to put them on blast, but the answer that they gave, which is what everyone gives, which is get involved,
Standard.
lock doors, and get organized. And you could just hear people going because this is a group of like precinct chairs
Yeah.
and activists and people who regularly attend meetings. And it's so you could hear the kind of like collective groan of we need more answers. And that's why I thought when we're thinking about what is this podcast, not only for you, it's this coalition building, but for me, it's also providing introspection and maybe a behind the scenes look at what is happening in politics. Like what is
Yeah.
the plan by some of these stakeholders? And then specific items that we can do going forward. So if you are at home and you can't make meetings, but you want to do something, then I hope that this is an avenue and a medium that will help provide you those answers so that we as a
Yeah.
community that I'm hoping we build can contribute to the cause. And so this led to our idea that this is going to be a podcast about going back to your original thought, which is flipping Texas before 2032, before it's too late for all of us. And then that got into our name, which kind of
Mhm.
gets back to our biography and the things that we represent. So
Yeah,
I'll
so
go
we
ahead.
have we have to be clear-eyed, right, about why what we have been doing
Mhm,
hasn't worked, and it's why there were those collective groans in the room. It's like, "I've heard that before.
mhm.
If you're not offering anything new, it's dispiriting."
Right.
Right?
It's like,
Like, there
nothing
has
wrong
to
with
be a recognition of like, okay, so what we did last time didn't cut it.
yeah,
And then until you're willing to admit that and then pivot and say, so here's what we need to do differently. And
yeah.
sometimes it means we have to adopt strategies of people who have been successful. Like
Mhm.
it was not a uniform story on election night 2024. Um,
Yeah.
right in the same
Arizona.
election where Donald Trump wins this even like this squeaks out a popular vote victory even, Senator Ruben Gallego is now a
Mhm,
thing from Arizona, and I think we also picked up a Senate seat in Michigan. Is that right? And so
mhm.
states that Trump is winning, there have been Democrat politicians who figured out how to who succeed despite that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, going back to what you were saying, like that comes to our name, which is Mission Texas. We have to be laser focused on what is the actual mission. We don't have time. We really don't to just be so gentle with everybody's egos.
Mhm.
Um, you know, whether it's someone in the party apparatus or if you're an elected official or you're a consultant, uh, we're gonna have these people on and we're gonna ask them tough questions because what has come before hasn't worked. And so, yeah, Mission Texas, our name. We are both veterans and we're both people of faith.
Well, I'm still a
And
service member, just to be clear, so I'm
yeah,
not a
you
veteran yet.
still a service member.
I don't speak on behalf of the DoD or the Air Force. Let me be clear. Not in
Right.
orders. But
Yeah.
I don't have veteran status yet. So we'll see. But
But
anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
but mission mindset, mission both in the sense of a kind of a military-esque mission, should
Yeah.
you choose to accept it, a Mission Impossible type mission, but also the missions of Texas, the people who came to Texas to, um, for lack of a better word, evangelize, right? To
Mhm.
spread the good word, to spread, like, for them, it was to share the gospel. How do we take that same concept as Texas Democrats trying to build a coalition and share our own version,
Mhm.
our political gospel, if you will,
Yeah.
because um, we can't be shy about it. The other side isn't,
No.
and too many parts of our state, including places like where I grew up in Sherman, they're only getting one side of the story. I mean, that's one of the things I've always admired so much. Whatever you have to say against Beto O'Rourke, he came and he showed up,
Yeah.
and
Everywhere.
so I think we have to have that kind of just relentless commitment to talking to every voter, not writing anybody off by saying, if you're a Democrat, great. Obviously, you're already part of the team, but that's not. If that was enough, we wouldn't be having this podcast, right?
Yeah.
If you're an independent, great. We want your vote. If you're a
Yeah.
Republican, we still want your vote.
Yep. We're a
Kendall
coalition.
Scudder, who will be our first guest on the podcast, uh,
Spoiler alert.
we didn't talk about this on our episode, but he ran for Huntsville City Council twice. So
Mhm.
I've known Kendall Scudder since we were both East Texas Obama boys. We were both high schoolers working on that Obama primary, and it was just so fun to watch his political career take off, even while he was in college at Sam Houston State, and he was running for city council, and he very nearly won both times. It was so close. And one of the things he would tell me is that he's not trying to win a debate. He's trying to win an election.
Yeah.
And I think too often Democrats are trying to win a debate like they're going to win some sort of magical, invisible academic prize. Meanwhile, Republicans are going to go win the election because they're focused on winning power. And we're
Mhm.
seeing the consequences of that. But, anyways, what Kendall told me is that people would come up to him and just say just the wildest, off the wall stuff. And whether they knew this or not about him, he grew up with two moms. And people would come up to him and say something like, you know, the gays cause hurricanes. And,
Yeah.
it'd be very easy to have a knee jerk,
Antagonistic. Yeah.
yeah, antagonistic attitudes like, don't you ever talk to me, yada, 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 and just write them off and curse them out, right?
Mhm.
Instead, what Kendall would would do, which I think is brilliant, is he'd put his hand over his heart. He'd lean in, he'd say, and I'm trying to do my best Kendall accent right
Yeah.
now. You know,
Oh gosh.
a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
And then he would pull his hand off his heart. He'd open it up like he's about to shake his hand almost and say, now let me talk to you about public education.
Yeah.
Because even if you disagree on all sorts of issues, if you can find an area of common ground that really resonates to somebody,
Mhm.
they might give you their vote.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to have a lot of people who disagree with me vote for my candidate if it
Yeah.
means my candidate's going to win.
Yeah. Well, I think you're getting back to the laser focusedness of this, and again, this is Mission Texas, so we are mission oriented. We have a goal. We may hear us talk a little bit about movies and pop culture. That's why you might think of this as a Mission Impossible, as you mentioned, vibe. And then, but it also goes back to, as you mentioned, the Texas history and our pride in our state. And the big, the most well known Spanish mission ever is the Alamo. And so we couldn't be called the Alamo podcast. So we called ourselves,
Copyright problems there,
there's,
right? Yeah.
there's some trademark, we're
Trademark.
lawyers.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I mean, whatever it was, but I'm not trademark. No criminal defense lawyer.
Yeah.
But it's, this idea that we have a confluence of all these interests, and that's why we're called Mission Texas, which is about flipping Texas.
By the way, I saw Beto O'Rourke on Hassan Minaj recently, and
Yes, yeah.
Hassan called him out for not knowing the words to Texas Our Texas, and
No way.
I was a little disappointed, Beto. I'm sorry. I love you.
Oh,
I love you, Beto. You gotta get on here
I mean,
you
that's a
got
bit of a random, but, I know the Notre Dame fight song.
I could probably still sing Texas Our Texas. It was one of the things we had to learn while we were at, Boy State, actually.
So that's about us. I mean, this is about the podcast, what our mission is, what our podcast name is about, who we are, but and you heard a little bit about what you kind of can expect from us, from
Mhm.
the types of people we want to talk to, but what you can logistically expect from us is that every month, every week, we're going to talk to somebody, we're going to interview folks, and then once a month, we're going to talk about what we learned and kind of do a synthesis of what do we think we need to accomplish? What do we need to be doing here? But more importantly, we want to hear from y'all. And we have an email. You can also message or leave us comments on our social media, but missiontexaspodcast@gmail.com. And we would love to hear from you because this is a community and we're going to do this together. And if you have thoughts or feelings or maybe a reaction, we would love to hear from you and discuss that with your permission on this podcast. So we hope to hear from you and maybe we can all come together with some action items where we think, okay, this is exactly what we need to be doing. And then maybe going forward, I hope to also incorporate behind the scenes access at things. Like maybe I'll bring you along on a block walk so you know what that's looking like. We want to take to the road and get to our friends in San Antonio and Austin and all over the state, like you're talking about, Alex. My dad's from the hill country, and I'd love to get down there, especially after what happened over the summer and see how they're doing. But that's where you can expect from us. And you can also expect, as we mentioned, that we're going to talk to who you think. We're going to try to talk to electeds, state party leaders like Kendall, but we also want to talk to maybe unlikely allies and also just people who we should hear from as to why they didn't vote as for Democrats in the last cycle. And I think that gets into something that I know you want to accomplish in
Mhm.
this podcast.
Yeah, so, you're kinda hinting at one of the things I really hope we're able to do once we learn this podcasting thing and
I
we
know
have our skills developed and, we're learning it on the go, on the job training, as we called it
on
in the
the job.
military, right?
Yeah.
OJT, um,
We're both
is I wanna
lawyers.
do,
Yeah, we don't do this.
a series of episodes, um, basically looking at Venn diagrams where someone voted for a Republican and a Democrat. And we know just mathematically there are a large number of these people in the state of Texas. Um, as recently as the election with Colin Allred and Donald Trump in 2024, there were a lot more people who voted for Donald Trump than voted for Ted Cruz. And so, just based on how numbers work, we can then assume there are people who, on the same ballot, selected Donald Trump, but also picked Colin Allred. I want to
Mhm,
know about these people. I think that'd be really interesting, and I think we'd have a lot to learn from them.
mhm.
By the same token, we know there were a lot of people in the 2018 election who voted for Greg Abbott, but also voted for Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Those are the types of sort of ordinary people, just regular voters, not trying to get any kind of flashy names up there. I want to talk to real people, and I'm going to call these episodes "Deeper in the Heart of Texans." Um, for those of you familiar with another famous song, the stars at night are big and
Are
bright
big and bright. I know that one.
deep in the heart of Texas,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to get deeper in the heart of Texans and just see what was going on in their minds. We're not going to leave it to just the kind of split ticketer types. Obviously, there are a lot of people who are just waiting on the sidelines. We know for a fact there are a ton of people who are registered to vote who don't always make it off the sidelines, and so
Mhm.
we don't get more vote power from someone who switches from red to blue as we get someone who just comes off the couch, right? And
Yeah.
so It's going to take everything, all the above strategy. We want to persuade, but we also want to energize.
Hmm.
I think you have to do both.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of things I imagine doing in those particular types of episodes.
Yeah. I know, and I want to do unlikely allies, people that maybe are public school advocates, but traditionally very conservative. Maybe they believe in small government and their city councils having more power, but now they're being taken away from the state government. Maybe they're gun owners, but they believe in gun safety, and they believe in the cause of what's going on in protecting our kids against gun safety. So I want to talk to those people and see, what are your thoughts? How can we bring you into this coalition? But I think also going back to who we are, people who are of faith. And I want to talk to faith leaders and
Mhm.
people who are, and I don't want to say that we're only for people who are Christian, but I
Not at
think
all.
that there's a ton of faith leaders in this community. And for example, here near Capel, we've got a lot of mosques, and I would love
Mhm.
to talk to them and see what's going on in their community. How can we convince them to vote and hopefully vote for us, and that this is a place for them too? I will say that I hope to also convince people outside of Texas to pay attention to
Mhm.
the community and also invest in Texas, because I think this is going to be something that they need to invest in, as we mentioned, that we're on the case, that
Yeah.
this is, we're here to make the case for Texas, and maybe we're, we're their lawyers, we're going to be on their side, and we're going to try to convince you to be with us. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the things that you've heard our intro music, and I think one of the things I thought of was that it kind of sounds like a true crime podcast, which I know everyone loves. And I think of it that way. I was an investigator by trade, and I kind of do that still as a defense counsel. And I'm discovering the facts, trying to figure out what happened in the past. And I think of it that way, that this podcast is like that. Like, we're not really here to report on the news. Maybe there's some statewide things we're going to talk about that affect us, like redistricting and the candidates. But we're really just a deep dive. If you like a true crime podcast, I think you might like this, because it's kind of delving into the facts of what's happened and what we're going to do going forward. And I think if you like that kind of vibe, you're going to like this. So and it's kind of self-perpetuating, like it's going to move us forward to where we are. And I hope to have reflection episodes where we heard from, for example, Kendall, and he said, these are the 5 things we're trying to do. And then maybe check in with him or his staff in 6 months and say, okay, how did we do? Like, did you accomplish the things that you're wanting to do? So we can show for the investment that people are using, either with their time or their money, to say that Texas is worth it. And I think that will give some transparency for our donors, for our voters, for the people that want to invest here. So,
Yeah, and whether they like it or not, the rest of the country has to get wise to the facts, right?
yeah.
That after 2030, like I think it's 42 electoral votes that we're looking to get.
I think it's
Um,
42. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah.
that's more than Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania combined.
Hmm.
So if we win Texas, that opens up a lot more paths to victory. And if we don't win Texas, we're almost guaranteed not to win. There are other ways to go about it, but they're all going to go through the South one way or another. And so
Hmm.
the kind of things that need to happen, and we need to rethink fundamentally how we're doing things. And so Texas is the place to come and do it because it's the biggest
Yep.
prize. And in the same manner that we have to do it so that we can win, if we can figure it out, we've almost guaranteed that they will lose. You know,
Yeah. And what's interesting is that I think that I've heard just from my own race that the National Party really doesn't put much resources here. And if they did, it was at the end of Colin
yeah,
Allwright's last race. And it was just a lot of money for advertisements. That's what I heard. I don't know
yeah.
if that's true. I'd love to explore
Too
that.
late to spend it effectively, right?
Yeah, like not on infrastructure that lasts year to year. And I would love to learn
I
more
do.
about that. How do they perceive us? Why are they not investing in our state? And what have we not gotten together? What do we need to do? And if they're listening, we'd love to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
because that's something we have to hear. We need to have these hard conversations about it. But
Yeah, I'm happy to critique national Democrats and using us as a piggy bank, but I'm also first to admit that I think we as a party, um, Texas Democrats have the kind of just most pessimistic, losingest attitude sometimes. Even at the very beginning of a race, before anything has even happened,
yeah,
we've decided that we're not going to win this cycle. I don't think
yeah,
it's going to happen this time. It's like, how can
next,
you be so sure this early?
yeah,
Right? Like we have a Democratic governor in Kentucky right now. Like and he's very popular. Like
yeah,
if they can win a race in Kentucky, we can win a race in
yeah.
Texas. Texas is
Well,
not as conservative as Kentucky. Yeah. We have 2 Democratic senators from Georgia right now.
I know if Stacey
But
Abrams is listening, girl, we would love to have you on this podcast. I would love to hear from you. So we talked a little bit about our what you can expect and a little bit about our goals. Do you have any other like aspirations for this podcast as far as just how it, how it's going to do or what things you want to accomplish?
my goal is that Texas awards its Electoral College votes to the Democratic nominee for president in 2032.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
that's really kicking the can down the road though, because we're not
yeah.
going to know for 7 years. I think in the immediate term, I would like to see us be able to um, move the conversation. I
Yeah.
think it is so easy to get wrapped up in the day to day. I want to see conversations happening within the party infrastructure, from the
Mhm.
state party leaders to the elected officials to the activists and the kind of allied organizations.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about what it is that they're going to do differently
Hmm.
for the bigger picture. And I'm not going to be shy about when I think there are people who could do more that aren't,
Hmm.
because they don't have, I guess, a direct incentive to. What
Yeah.
I mean by that is, we were a gerrymandered state before this most recent round that was just so egregious and done mid decade. Um, One of the unfortunate byproducts of that is for the people who do hold office, and they're very popular people, a lot of them, they don't really have much of an incentive to work their turf, to use an organizer term, to maximize the turnout of
Mhm.
their district, um, because all they have to do to get reelected is win their primary. And so, if you have a big campaign war chest and you have the great benefit of having a platform of an elected office, and you're not doing everything in your power to help move the needle so that we can get people elected statewide and be able to win a statewide election come
Mhm.
2032, then we need to replace the furniture.
Well, so I think we're getting into maybe our predictions of what we're going to learn. And I think that's definitely a big one is that, and for me, the goals are similar. Another one is that I hope we can define ourselves as a party and what we are about and convince people what we are and not let Republicans define us. As we
Yes.
mentioned at the beginning, we are not anti God, we're not anti like, our country. And I hope that we can show that as a podcast and also a community and just, I hope this is a self sustaining podcast in the future. And we can keep this going a year from now. And that's sort of a personal goal, which I hope, and we're reporting on the general election. And I hope that we are hosting block walks and we're getting people who are not otherwise active and showing them that what they're doing matters and it's possible to move the needle. But as far as predictions, I'm with you because I think that we are overly gerrymandered. I think we have a lot of voter apathy, and I want to explore what that is and why. And I think part of that is what you're saying, which is that we are not asking them for their vote. We're not convincing them of that vote. Maybe they think that their vote doesn't matter because it's going to not change their local race. Maybe they have people who are, safe seat Republicans or Democrats, and because of that, money's not flowing into that area, and because of that, there's not as many people knocking on their doors or mailers going into their mail or text messages. And and also, like, there are people, I'll say, like Jasmine Crockett. I don't think she had a challenger in her election, but we saw her going all over the country helping other Democrats. But because of that, she isn't in her own district. But I don't fault her for that. So I think there's a lot to be said in those kind of areas, and those are my kind of predictions. We can talk a lot about voter laws, like how we register people to vote and how we have to have identity, and does that deter people? But we can't control that. We can't control that issue. I think we have to prove that we're gonna abide by the rules. We're going to get everybody, convincing them that their vote matters. And I wanna figure out somehow to convince folks that, yes, we're gerrymandered, but you can't gerrymander a statewide race. And if you are a blue dot in a very red sea, your vote matters in this
Mhm.
statewide, and we need it. And we are going to try to convince you to vote with us better than what we did, because we have to convince people, as our friend Kendall was telling us, and that you will hear, that we have to have the messaging too. And one of my goals is to not even really talk about the president. Like, I hope that we can have a whole conversation about this party and about this state without even referencing the president, because we have to be able to define ourselves outside of that. We're the contra him. And, like, we aren't just the non Donald Trump party. We are a party unto ourselves that has meaning and promise and value. And I hope to show that to you. So those are my goals and predictions. I also think there's something else, like, we have to elect people and get people as candidates that people are excited about, and one of the things I wanna explore and ask more about is, how do we get working class people more elected? Because as a candidate who worked and campaigned and has a kid, I will tell you it was real hard. So how do we get folks in a
Yeah.
position where they can run and convince.
Especially in our state government where, you're only gonna make like $7,200 a year.
Mhm.
Most people, working people can't take off for several months at a time to go be in the legislature. God
Yeah,
forbid if Governor Abbott wants to call a special session or 2 or 3 or 10, right? Like,
so those are our predictions and our sort of our goals, and I hope that we can maybe test those in a year. Maybe we'll hear something else, and we're just totally surprised about what we're going to be doing. And but can you tell our listeners a little bit about who they might hear from in our next couple episodes?
sure. So we already gave away the game on episode 1. We're gonna be talking to Kendall Scudder. He's the state chairman of the Texas Democratic Party. Very exciting. Like I said, I've known him for a long time. He and I are both 35 years old. One of very few young state party chairs in the country. He's fired up. Talks about working class values. Our second episode going to be another tie back to someone I know, Christian Carranza. She is running in what a lot of people think of as the most flippable seat in this Texas House down in
Mhm.
San Antonio. Even more flippable now that it sounds like the incumbent is now going to be running for one of the new gerrymandered congressional seats. Um, and then we're going to try to hop around geographically. We're going to hop around from whether you're a state party person, whether you're a candidate for office, whether you're an elected official, whether you're an elected official running for another office.
Mhm.
Foreshadowing, we're also going to have on Dallas State Senator Nathan Johnson, who is a candidate for Attorney General.
Mhm.
Um,
We're gonna
and
have
and
consultants, we're gonna have
Yep.
campaign people, people you may never have heard of. I hope to talk to even donors, because they have a perspective in all this. They're the ones raising money for that a lot of candidates know, but you may not have heard of. And yet they're so
Mhm.
well known in these circles that it's like, I've heard so much of the fact that there's donor fatigue, and we're sending our money elsewhere. Like, we're investing in other races in the United States. Why are we not bringing money here? So those are some types of people that we're going to talk to over the course of this podcast. And maybe things will change, maybe the format will change, but the mission we're going to be focused on is flipping Texas.
If you had
So,
to reach for the stars, if you imagine your dream guests for Mission Texas in the next year, and again, we're going to keep this thing going until we declare mission accomplished
yeah.
in November 2032.
Yeah.
This could be going on for quite some time. Um, But in this next year, who are your top dream guests?
Well, I think our statewide candidates are definitely dream guests, like James
Okay.
Talarico and Colin Red, because I think they have a perspective that we don't across the state of what we need to get done, especially Colin Red, having done it before. I'd love to hear from him on what happened and what he wants to do differently. I think there's a lot of people really hungry to hear that answer and have a recognition of what happened last time. I
Yeah.
don't know. I would love to hear from him.
To the same point, I would love to have on the candidates who ran statewide who have gotten the closest. I'm talking
Right.
about Beto O'Rourke. Love
Mhm.
to have him on the podcast. I was just going to say Mike Collier and Justin Nelson.
Yep.
Justin Nelson in particular, big fan of his. I had volunteered on his campaign. Texas, man, we blew it. We could have had a former Supreme Court clerk as our Texas Attorney General, a guy who is just an incredible advocate and partner at Sussman Godfrey, who handled the Dominion voting case.
Mhm.
Do you remember that one against Fox News?
Right, yeah, Fox News, yeah. Well, a Supreme Court clerk that's not Ted Cruz. Uh, any other dream guests?
Yeah, I would love to have on. We kind of alluded to them earlier. I want to have Senator Ruben Gallego from
Mhm.
Arizona. I would love to have on Senators Warnock and Ossoff from Georgia. People like Governor Bashir, governor in Kentucky. Anytime someone has bucked their state's trend, I
Mhm.
want to know what they're doing differently and what lessons Texans can draw from it.
I mean, if we're shooting for the stars, let's go for the presidents. I mean, Obama, let's go
Yeah,
there.
let's get Barack
Uh, why
Barrio. Come on down.
let's get on down. Where were y'all in Texas? I'd love to hear that.
But that was my
You know,
start in this whole thing. I
you
mentioned I
know?
was an apolitical person until I was an Obama high
Yeah.
school intern. So that would be a huge dream come true
Yeah,
for me.
or George Bush. I mean, gosh, where's that guy?
Well, he's so
He
local.
has to have an opinion on this. I would love to hear from him, but I doubt that'll ever happen, given the fact that he has never really mentioned how whatever everything's going.
Hey,
But
it's a dream guest. I
very
think I
nice.
voted for George W. Bush in a like a school poll, right, when I was a kid,
Mhm.
just because he was Texan, and again, I grew up apolitical, and I think that's an interesting thing to remind ourselves. If you're a political person, if you're a politico, you are the kind of like oddball who's consuming this kind of content.
Yeah, we're
you
odd.
are
Yeah.
you are not the average voter. Unfortunately, a lot of it is I don't know what it is. Maybe I need to talk to these people more, but my sense is it is like vibes. When I was a kid voting for George W. Bush versus Al Gore in like a middle school poll or whatever it was, um, what was I even basing that off of? Like the Texas swagger, right? You
Yeah.
know, and there are those kind of intangible things that people pick up on. Like even non-political people can just kind of tell, like, I don't like that Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Is it something he said on a particular policy? No, I just don't like him. So what is it about him that they don't like? And for the people who they do like, I think Barack Obama is a great example. Actually,
Mhm.
it brought a lot of
Well,
people off the couch who didn't necessarily think of themselves as Democrats, but they were Obama voters.
mhm.
What is it about a candidate that can separate them from the pack?
Yeah. Well, I think on that, I want to talk to people who break through to audiences on a regular basis, like Joe Rogan or everyone knows Mark Cuban. Like, how do you message better and get our points across? Because clearly we're not doing it. So we got to figure that
Yeah,
out.
this
And
podcast can't just be preaching to the choir. If
yeah,
only Democrats are listening to us, we have failed.
right. Well, I want to figure that out. Yeah. How do we message? Who do we get across? And maybe kind of like James Talarico. I think he's gotten a point across to people that are not normal Democratic voters. I'm getting texts from friends that are like, who's this guy?
Mhm.
So, and they're people I would never have guessed as someone that's political at all. And yet they're texting me about him. So,
I'm 100% biased, but I mean this sincerely. I think he's the best communicator in the party right now.
he's an
At least
incredible.
at least in Texas, I think he's the best communicator we've got.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any other final thoughts on the start of this podcast? I can't believe this is going to be our odyssey.
Yeah, I mean it'll be fun when we win in 2032 because we kept our eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
It was a fun little piece of history. We
Yeah.
called it right here.
Well, it's 2025, so I guess
We got
that's
a little over 7
6
years.
years to the election-ish, 7 years. Yeah.
Seven,
So
seven, yeah. 7 and 2 months.
7 and 2 months. Yeah, there we go. All right, future selves, you guys got it. We're gonna go.
I mean, winning elections along the way would also be great. Like, I would love to win this Senate seat against
Yeah.
Ken Pax. I mean, let's just say it. Sorry, John Cornyn. I'm sure you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to try really hard, but I think your party's moved on, and Ken Paxton is likely going to be the nominee for Senate.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
would
and
love for us not to have a Senator Paxton.
well, I
But
mean,
even if we win this election, my point is that this podcast should still continue, because winning one election is not going to cut it if we can't also win a presidential.
so predictions wise, I hope we win in 2026, some statewide office. We got a lot of contenders that we hope to talk to, but also in 2028, just looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
We have no real statewide races. And so if we are going to run a good ground campaign and talk about issues with voters, it has to be led by organizers and by the
Mm-hmm.
party apparatus. And so I'm hoping future Kate and Alex are talking about what that means and how we're going to help, because we don't have like $13 million invested in one candidate to kind of get those races off the ground. And if we're going to elect, hopefully not JD Vance, then, or whoever else is going to run, and we can add our electoral votes, then we have to have some unifying force. And that can't be just the candidate at the top of the ticket here statewide. So that makes me nervous. And that is a prediction I hope that we can solve by then. And we're going to put in a lot of work. And I hope my prediction by then is that we're going to convince people to invest in the infrastructure here, because we need it.
Yeah, we realized in 2024 that we just got smoked in the podcast space, right? Like, Republicans are being very thoughtful about building out the kind of communications infrastructure that we are trying to now create. And so if you want to hear more Democratic voices and people just with another point of view other than what you currently think of as the Manosphere podcast bro network, right? We gotta lift up different kind of perspectives. And there are not a lot of Texas Democratic podcasts in general, but even if you widen it out to the nation, how many Democratic podcasts are hosted by veterans of faith who are former federal clerks and young parents? I think we're going to be unique. So we're going to be able to provide a different perspective. And so I don't think we're in competition with anybody. We're going to be doing something new.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be the podcast you listen to when you're doing errands and yard work like me,
or when you're lifting weights or going on a long run or
exactly. I know. I do that too.
Yeah, just like how Republicans don't have a monopoly on faith or patriotism, they don't have a monopoly on exercise. I don't like this idea that is being propagated out there. Okay. Yeah.
Well, can I end with this? I think every episode we want to talk a little bit about, obviously we're going to talk about politics, but I want to ask our guests a little bit what they got going on outside of politics, because it's not all about that. And if you want to follow us on our journey here, it's Mission Texas Podcast on all social media platforms. And you can also find me at Kate for Texas. But Alex, where can people find you? And also, what do you got going on? Because I know there's something that you got going on exercise-wise, speaking of outside of politics.
You can find me on Instagram at teacher, veteran, lawyer dad, all one word. And you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm not on TikTok yet. I'm sure Kate will convince me to join eventually.
Yeah.
What I have going on outside of politics is I am training for the 50th Marine Corps Marathon. It's my first marathon where I'll have to stay somewhere overnight. But it'll be my 6th marathon overall. And I'm partnering with an organization called Wear Blue, Run to Remember. And what this organization does is they help the families of fallen service members train for their first half or full marathon as a way to honor their loved one. And so I'm in the process of raising the money to support those Gold Star athletes, is what they call them.
I love that. If I were to ever do another marathon, it would be the Marine Corps. I definitely have regrets not doing that one. I have done a couple, but these days, if I can just get outside and go for a walk, it's a miracle.
So I recently learned that the Marine Corps Marathon website has a famous finishers page
No
for like,
way. Okay.
yeah, like celebrities and politicians and things who have done it.
Hmm.
Who do you think is the fastest famous finisher?
I don't know.
It's
Lance Armstrong, maybe, or George Bush?
Justice Clarence Thomas.
No way. Are you kidding me? Clarence
He
Thomas?
like a 32-year-old Clarence Thomas ran the Marine Corps Marathon and was pretty fast. He's
Like
pretty quick.
sub 4?
Yeah, sub 4 for sure.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
was
wow.
he had a better than any of the races I've done so far. So
Wow.
it was sub 3:30. Uh, yeah, yeah, he was
Wow.
fast.
Okay. Well, I would love to just get outside, so that would be great. We're gonna definitely root you on. And for me, I just started Bible in a Year podcast, which is a Catholic-based Bible reading. And
Hmm.
if anybody's doing that, please let me know because I would love to go on this journey with you. I think I'm on day 5, so it's really great. I do it on my way to work and I'm listening. What they do is they actually read the Bible to you and then discuss. Father Mike does. So I'm really into it. And I just feel like there's a lot of parts of the Old Testament that I don't often go back to or retread because in our church, we always have gospel readings. And so I feel like there's a lot in the Old Testament that I just need to revisit. And I'm really looking forward to that. So,
We'll probably get into it in a later episode, but um, whenever I was in Austin, I was a part of a group called Wanderings, where we would kind of reenact how people would basically do scripture orally, because a town might only have one manuscript, so there'd be one person who would kind of have it memorized and would
yeah.
or read it to everybody, and kind of recreate that around the fire kind of dynamic. And we would listen to the story, we would retell it together, and then we could discuss it. And it was really interesting because in Austin we had a bunch of members of the like journalists in the group, and they would come at it in this very interesting perspective as to what is the narrator including as a detail, what is being left out, what kind of themes, what kind of echoes are we hear, like literally we'd be hearing it because we wouldn't be reading. Like when you think of a Bible study, you think of people reading books.
Hmm.
Anyways, I have a hot take, which is that I think the book of Genesis and Exodus should be flipped in order.
Wow.
We can either get into it now or we can get into it later. But
Well, this gets
um,
into something I'd love to do, which is to maybe incorporate Bible study into this podcast, if that's
oh
gonna be
man,
interesting to people. Like maybe do an episode on the deep dive of all the texts that people cite to for gay marriage or abortion
yeah,
or, you know, protecting and helping the poor or whatever. So if you're interested in that, let us know because I think that's
yeah.
something I'd love to do in a year.
I think that's a really great idea. I mean, my church, the First United Methodist Church Dallas, they're doing a Bible study right now, I think called 1946, which is the year that the word homosexuality was actually added
Hmm.
to Scripture. The English word homosexuality had never been in biblical text up until that point.
Yeah, I think there's so much to
There's a
talk
lot of things people
about.
just don't know.
And I think this is for someone that just wants to learn about the Bible. You don't have to be religious. And we can
Yeah,
talk about, like, okay, what are the talking points that our counterpoints are saying about the Bible? Because a lot of us don't really maybe know or have the lexicon at uh, at the tips of our tongue. And maybe we need to talk about it more and talk, maybe if that's of interest to you, message us, Mission Texas Podcast at gmail.com. And I think that's it for now, Alex.
yeah. I would just say one more thing, and then we can close it out, which is love him or hate him. The Tucker Carlson interview of Ted Cruz.
It's good.
If you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know how often you're going to hear me say go watch a Tucker Carlson
Yeah.
interview, but I am recommending 100% you go watch that interview because he is able to really push and dig in on, I think a lot of times these politicians can get kind of comfortable with their talking points, especially on faith stuff, because they know no one's going to push back on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so when Ted Cruz is offering his defense of why he just kind of supports whatever the Netanyahu government in Israel wants to do,
Mm-hmm.
Tucker Carlson asks him very pointed questions as to why. And when Ted Cruz is confronted with someone who's not going to take a surface level answer, he kind of flounders. And so I'm actually going to be very interested to see how someone like a James Tallarico, a seminary student, is able
Mm-hmm.
to to give the opposite viewpoint. Because I think too often the conversation has been dominated, and I'm
100%.
just so excited to jump in and be in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt would say.
Man in the arena. Yep. Well, that's it for now, y'all. Next week, as we mentioned, we got Kendall Scudder, and then after that, we'll have Christian Carranza. We will see y'all next week. You can follow us on all socials at Mission Texas Podcast. Email us at missiontexaspodcast@gmail.com. This episode is edited by Juan Jose Flores. Our music bumper is by Adam Pickerel, and our cover art is by Tina Sohn.